Welcome in to the Utah Utes Football Digest. I'm Brian Ankrum. Today we're going to go over storylines and matchups for the Oregon State Utah game. All right, so what are the main storylines this game? Let's discuss what's going on here. So Utah is actually heading back into Research Stadium in Corvallis for the first time um, since Oregon State pretty much ran all over Utah in 2021. Um, that game was tough. I think they're going to probably try to establish that run defense or that rushing offense, in a similar fashion as they did in that year. Damian Martinez is an excellent running back behind a very strong offensive line. Um, can this Utah D line stop that running attack from Oregon State? We're going to go over some matchups and some rankings a little bit later and talk about that. They've done a phenomenal job this year against Power Five opponents, who actually one of them is ranked, and then we played a ranked team last week, and both those teams wanted to run the ball. That's kind of their mo. They're good at it, and Utah stopped them. So Utah has a highly ranked running defense. Um, are we going to get Connor O'Toole back this week? What will that look like with him changing out with Ellis and Fano? Right now I think the depth chart has him behind or ahead, sorry, of Jonah Ellis, but Jonah Ellis has led the team this year, led the country in sacks, and he looks highly unstoppable. So going to be interesting to see how that dynamic will work. I don't think adding another elite edge rusher is necessarily a bad thing. So it'll just be interesting to see how they can implement him in with the current defensive line. Offensively, can Utah exploit this Oregon State secondary? That has been their weakness this year. They have a fairly strong rush defense. Um, we don't know exactly what that looks like per se, just off of who they've played. Washington State, they wanted to air the ball out, and they did. And the weaker non-con schedule just doesn't give us a good picture of what they have um, on the defensive front as far as stopping the run defense. So that'll be interesting to see too. We are without Jaquin Jackson most likely this game. I haven't heard anything of him practicing, so I'm going to kind of bank on Jalen Glover being the guy this week. Maybe see some Chris Curry, maybe see an underclassman. I don't really know at this point, but that would be my best bet. Jalen has looked really good the last couple games. I think just the added playing time, the added confidence is allowing him to hit levels that he hasn't quite achieved yet, and he should only continue to get better. All right. The other thing, will Cam Rising play? At this point, I'm not going to speculate whether he plays or not. I don't think anybody knows at this point what's going on. So I'm basically going to assume that Nate Johnson is the guy. Um, last week I think the overall game flow and game plan, once Utah was up 14-0 in the second half, dictated that we needed to run out the clock, run the ball according to the offensive coaching staff and the coordinator. Um, Not saying I necessarily agree with it. You know what? It worked. We're 4-0 at this point. I think we might be able to see Nate Johnson open things up a little more this week. He's continued to work. He's continued to gain confidence as well. He's a redshirt freshman, so he didn't start playing the quarterback position until he was a junior in high school. So uh, that's gonna be something to watch this week. I believe that we have the weapons with that receiving group that we have, where we very well can exploit this defense on the back end of Oregon State. So also, the ultimate thing here, the ultimate storyline, in my opinion, is whether this Utah defense can continue carrying this team to victory. Right now, without our full offensive firepower and with Cam Rising out, the team is heavily relying on this defense, and rightfully so. It's an elite defense from everything that we've seen against really good competition. Um, how much pressure is being put on them? How long can they sustain this type of pressure? That's going to be a question here. Um, unless we can get some offensive firepower going and see some offensive production this game, it's probably gonna lie on the defense's shoulders again to stop that running game that they're going to try to establish. Not overly concerned with Oregon State's passing offense, but they have proven with DJ Uyangalele that they are a threat. He's a fairly good quarterback. He was a 5-star quarterback out of high school. I don't think he's one of the top quarterbacks in this league by any means, but he can get the job done. So if we can control them defensively, I do think that we can win this game. My question remains, how long can this sustain? So those are a few storylines on this game. I think a couple of those are very important storylines as far as Utah able to walk out of Corvallis with a win. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. But at this point, I'd want to kind of move on and talk a lot more about the matchups on both sides of the ball for both teams. All right, let's talk about the matchup that is probably on everyone's mind, which would be the Oregon State offense versus this Utah defense. So let's go over some numbers on the Oregon State offensive side of things. So obviously, DJ Uyangalele is going to be the quarterback. So far this year, he's got a 57.8 completion rating, 7 touchdowns against 3 interceptions. He has taken 3 sacks. That completion percentage is fairly low for the simple fact that he hasn't received a ton of pressure. I think their offensive line does a better job in the running attack than it does in pass protection. So I think there is some opportunity for our defensive line to put pressure on DJ. And then just moving on to the running back position, to their bell cow, their main back in this backfield is Damian Martinez. As I mentioned earlier, he is a really good running back on this team. He's got experience. He's got shiftiness. He has vision, speed. I mean, he's everything you kind of want to see in a running back, and they rely on him. They lean on him to get a large chunk of the offensive yards each game. So far this year, he has 57 carries for 432 yards. So, I mean, the math on that's pretty simple. He's averaging 7.6 yards a carry. He's busting out good chunk runs. He does have a 64 yard run this year. He only has 1 touchdown, which I haven't watched a ton of Oregon State. So I've watched couple of their games, and I really guess I haven't paid attention when they got around the goal line. They must put in either Deshaun Fenwick or just run the ball with DJU. Because if you look at their touchdown numbers, Fenwick has 4 touchdowns on the year. DJU has 5 rushing touchdowns on the year. So, a lot of that, if they're right on the goal line, um, possibly some rollouts or some QB sneaks up the middle, um, or give the ball to Fenwick and let him power home is what it kind of seems like. I could be wrong on that, so I hadn't watched a ton of games, uh, and a ton of their production so far this year, I should say, in the red zone. So they are good. They're going to establish that. They're going to try to establish that, and that's the key for Utah's defense. On the receiving front for Oregon State, Silas Bolden has 18 receptions on the year for 235 yards and a touchdown. They have Anthony Gould, who's got 10 receptions, 217 yards. So his average per reception is a little bit better. He looks to be kind of their deep threat, but I don't think the passing attack is their game plan. They're wanting to establish the run. So what can we do to stop the run? Well, let's just talk about that. So we'll kind of go over some rankings per each team. So Oregon State is 14th in rushing offense. They rush 210 yards a game. As mentioned, that's what they're trying to establish. That's what they do. That's their identity as a team. It's very similar to the way Utah plays the game, in all honesty. And then on the flip side, Utah's defense right now, their rush defense is third in the country, 47.7 yards per game against, you want to talk about a Florida, Baylor, and UCLA team that they've done this against. So it's very impressive what Utah has done so far this year with their tough schedule to this point. They are second in rush yards per attempt. Utah's defense has only given up 1.7 yards per carry. A lot of that is related to the negative yards for the sacks that we've gotten this year. I know last game there was 50 something. I think there was like 51 yards in sacks on Dante Moore. So yeah, it does take that into account. But I mean, it also just talks about the strength of your defensive line in looking at that, because that's the majority of the sacks we've gotten this year is the defensive ends. And, we've gotten a few defensive tackle sacks. Tafuna got one last week, and Tanavasa has gotten a couple, if not three this year. He looks really good on the interior line. So speaking of the interior line, that's going to be a big part of stopping this run defense. We now have pretty much full strength on the interior defensive line with Tafuna and Peppa back. Tanabasa has proven to be great this year, as a young kid. So kind of talking about O'Toole earlier, I don't know how that's going to play out with substituting in Peppa, if he's going to substitute him for Tanabasa, if he's going to continue backing up Tafuna. Not really sure how that went last week. I know that they were all three rotating in and out, so it seemed to work really well, and just continue to see that happen this game. And Peppa's probably just going to continue to get better. He hasn't played at all this year, so just getting that game conditioning under his belt is going to be huge. I just see our offense our defensive lines are only improving this year. Another big factor in stopping this Oregon State running attack is going to be the play of our linebackers. You got Karene Reed, Lander Barton, and Levani Damani back there occupying that space. They've done a fantastic job this year. Gap control is going to be critical on this one. We just need to play sound defensively at the linebacking position. I think to be able to not so much stop the running game, but limit the attack. I don't think you'll ever completely stop this team's running ability. But the other thing is we have to continue to be clean in the tackling department. One thing that we've done really well this year, as opposed to last year, is bringing guys down when we get the chance. We're actually one of the top teams in the country in regards to fewest missed tackles per game, which is incredible and speaks a lot to this defensive coaching staff, because last year, the first game was terrible, and we saw glimpses throughout the year where they struggled in tackling with quite a few missed tackles. So they've done great this year. Uh, Hopefully they can keep that up. I kind of have a feeling they will. This defense is mean, nasty, and sound, and that's exactly what you want. As far as the defensive secondary is concerned, one question I have, and we saw it play out last week, is they slid Teo Johnson back to free safety, which allowed Vaki to play up closer to the line at the nickel position. I think that could be highly effective again this week. Vaki's better at the line, especially trying to stop the run. Teo's been graded out really great this year, one of the best on the team, if not the best, in pass coverage. So with him occupying the safety space, which is the position he's likely to play next year, according to Kyle Whittingham, I think it really does just offer a better look in run defense, and gives him gives him that shot at getting some good experience against good competition back there and at the safety position. It'll allow Cole Bishop to also move up in the box if we, as long as we can keep a good free safety back there for protection against going over the top. Then I think we'll be able to move Cole up and help and utilize him in the running defense, as well as putting pressure on the quarterback. So that was kind of what I was wanting to move into next. I think that our defensive front can put pressure on DJ Uiagalelei in this game. I don't think that they're going to want to throw the ball a lot, and they've seen what the defense has done this year to opposing teams' quarterbacks. The one big advantage that Oregon State's going to have is they're playing at home. I mentioned it earlier. This is a kind of a newly renovated Reser Stadium. It's going to be loud. It's going to be a night game. It's a Friday night game, which is kind of weird, but those games can definitely get weird in the Pac-12. But that place is gonna be loud. They know the significance of this game. Utah's ranked in the top 10 currently coming in, so they know that they can't go down 0-2 basically in conference play either, and try to win a Pac-12 championship. So yeah, it's going to be loud ruckus, and that is going to be in favor of Oregon State. So let's move right into our offense now after talking about that. The place is going to be loud. It's going to be hard for Utah to get their play calls in. I'm just judging by last week, we're a little bit slow at that anyways. I know that they were trying to milk the clock for the most part, so that plays into a lot of that. Early on in downs, basically, if there was an incomplete pass or a clock stoppage, they were snapping it pretty early. So that may still be a factor though with a young quarterback. We'll have to keep an eye. He has not played in a really loud environment yet. Baylor was pretty empty that game. This place will not be empty. It's going to be full. They're going to come ready. They're going to let us know exactly what they're all about. It's one of the more tough places to play in the Pac-12 for sure. Even though it's a small stadium, it carries a lot of noise. So we'll see how that works. But let's just kind of let's focus on what we can do offensively against this Oregon State defense. I had kind of mentioned earlier in talking their rush defense. They have been good. They're ranked 12th in the country this year at 77.3 yards per game of rush yards allowed. They're 10th in yards per attempt and 2.7 yards per carry. So they've done well. As mentioned, though, we haven't really seen a great uh, running attack played against this defense. So um, we'll have to see how this week goes. I know that I mentioned, that we're probably not going to be with Jaquindon Jackson this game. It's going to be Jalen Glover and maybe committee. Hopefully, we see some Curry. I'd love to see Chris Curry come back. I think he could add a little bit of spark to our running attack. And then what is Nate Johnson going to add? There could be some opportunity here as well for him if they're overcommitting and he can do a play action rollout and if he has a lot of open field ahead of him, look out. We haven't quite seen it yet. We saw a pretty good glimpse of that in the first game against Florida, where he had that 30-something yard run for a touchdown, where he blew by people and put some ankle breaking moves on others. He also runs physical. He's not afraid to put his head down, and he's a strong kid, and he'll try to run through tackles as well. So Utah will probably try to establish a running attack. That typically that's our MO as well. Let's establish the run and then work off that run. I would love to see this week. I would love to see the offense actually work off the run. If we just run the ball between the tackles every time, that Oregon State defense is just going to load the box. And there's going to be no lanes for anybody to run. They are a good rush defense. So I truly believe we really need to see what Nate's got. Let him open it up. Like I said before, I've said this multiple times. We've seen glimpses. He has some zip, some velocity on the ball. So far, his accuracy's been pretty good. He's going to make some freshman mistakes. I mean, there's just no doubt. But we have to allow him to make those and learn from them, and hopefully they're not too detrimental. Vele looked good last week. Couple of pretty long pass plays to him. He's a great possession receiver for us. He's his length, I think, is going to be tough for Oregon State defensive backs to compete with this game. Money Parks has really taken a step forward this year. I wish we were running an offense that was able to get these guys the ball, because I mean, between Vele, Money Parks, and of course Mikey Matthews, the defense the receiving group has really impressed, especially what we had last year. We just didn't have a ton outside of Vele. So I'd like to see some design rollouts, get Nate out in space, let him utilize both his legs and his arm in the passing game. He has been able to hit receivers on the run so far when they've done that this year. I'd like to see Landon King get more involved in the tight end game, because to put it bluntly, our tight ends have not been doing much. They haven't been getting open, and they have not been blocking very well offensively. So I'd rather see Landon utilized in more of the receiving game than anything else. I think that will allow Nate to have additional weapons, see additional guys open to make the plays. Oregon State, in the pass defense, they are 119th in the country. They're giving up 300.3 yards per game. So, as I've mentioned, that is something that this Utah offense really needs to try to take advantage of and exploit. On the flip side, we're 118th on passing offense at 145 yards a game. Obviously, some of that is just due to the play calling and the game plan, especially last week, just trying to kill the ball, kill the clock, uh, give the other team as few possessions as possible with our defense playing this well. If we can get some of that going, I really think we can not only win this game, but open up a couple scores, a couple score win in this game if we can do that. Just because of how dominant the defense has been, it's going to force Oregon State to maybe try to throw the ball a little bit more if we can do that, which goes into the Utah advantage, I would also think. So if we get behind, it's gonna be tough. They're gonna do the same thing that Utah did last week to UCLA. They're gonna utilize their running attack. They're gonna kill the clock, and it's gonna be hard for Utah to get back in this game if we get down, especially if we get down a couple scores. So hopefully the game remains close, or even Utah can get a lead or a couple score lead, because both teams are going to try to play exactly the same, I think, if that plays out that way. So, I, I don't really like to get. I despise giving scores. My opinion on what the score is going to be for games. I do it every week, so I'm going to keep doing it. But uh, it's tough to do, and you can always look back and say, "Man, I really missed that one." But I think the obvious thing here is it's probably going to be a low scoring game. 17-14 type of game, 21-17, 2017, kind of that ballpark. I'm going to take Utah in it. I'm not going to go against Utah, obviously, but it's going to be a very tough matchup if we don't have our full offensive weaponry at our disposal, and also if we do not try to open up the offensive playbook just a little bit more. But I have full faith in this coaching staff. They know what they're doing. They know ways to exploit teams, and I cannot wait for this game. I mean, I'm glad it's a Friday game. Kind of opens up the weekend for Saturday. And some of these Friday games can be weird, but they're fun games. These Pac-12 after dark type of games on a Friday are a lot of fun. Hopefully we can get plenty of Utah fans at the game to help cheer on the troops to a victory. It's going to be a pretty hostile environment, so we need all the support we can get. But I just want to thank everybody for dropping in and listening today. That's all I've got. I can't wait. Let's see what plays out tomorrow. But if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel. As mentioned, each week there's going to continue to be plenty of Utah football content coming down the road. We typically do live post game analysis, whether it be the next day or the day of the game. With this game being late, it's likely to be on Saturday if we can find some time. But yeah, so keep checking in on the channel and set yourself some notifications for these videos to pop out. You can absolutely share them as much as you want on Twitter. Let's expand this Utah football network. Let's make this a one-stop shop for all Utah football content. And with that said, I'm out. Go Utes.